Welcome in this video where I show you the Microstream Quarkus extension in action. This extension is new in version 8 of the Microstream release. You know probably Microstream and you probably know Quarkus. So with Microstream you can store Java object graphs without the need to have a relational database or a NoSQL solution. It stores it in a binary format. With Quarkus you can create Kubernetes native applications that is using the best-of-breed Java libraries and standards like the Jakarta EE standards. With this extension we make it possible that you use the Microstream functionality like the StorageManager and the root object that you define, that you can use that through Quarkus, using the Quarkus configuration, using the CDI beans that you have available there. And as mentioned, it is available as of version 8.0, which was released by the end of April. Quick overview what you need to do for Microstream. So the main concept is the StorageManager, and the StorageManager, when you start it, it is responsible for reading your data from a certain storage location, and it creates a object graph out of that in memory. From that point on you can use it as POJOs, no special requirements there, and whenever you ask the store method from the StorageManager, it saves the changes to that storage again. And the StorageManager needs a few configuration options, like for instance where it can find that storage. So how can you use that then within Quarkus? It is a rather simple procedure, few simple steps. So let's start by creating a Quarkus project. You can create the project in two different ways. You can use the Quarkus starter on the website, where you define your group and artifact ID, your build tool, Java version, etc. And then you define the extensions that you want. In this case, we need the REST easy one so that we have REST endpoints, and we want to use JSON probably, and that's why I add here the JSON dependency. Clicking on the button here, generate your application, will result in creating a zip file with your Maven project. The alternative is that you create it through the Quarkus CLI. There are also plugins for several IDEs, but with the Quarkus CLI you can create an application, you define again those extensions, and you define here the artifact and group ID, and then it creates your application here in that project and you can get started. We add the extension for Microstream to the project. For the moment, the Microstream extension for Quarkus is not available on that starter website, so we need to add it to our project in a second step. So I have here opened that project which was generated previously. It's a classic Maven project with the options that we specified, like the REST easy and the REST easy JSON extensions. So in the same way we can add our extension now here through the Maven Quarkus add extension goal, and that we add the Microstream one and the version 8.0. If you run that, it will just add that extension here to the list of dependencies. Another option is of course that you just copy this dependency into your POM file. That's of course also an option. You don't need that Maven command for that. Now that we have finished the configuration of our project, we can start using the extension functionality and implement our functionality of our application. The first thing that we can do is the configuration of the data storage, which is now possible through that Microstream extension. that Microstream extensions allows that the configuration data which are needed for the configuration of the storage manager, as I mentioned earlier, that they are read through the sources that Quarkus itself supports. So the application property file is one of them. So in this file we can, for instance, define here the location on disk where the data are stored, and an optional one is, for instance, that I can define how many channels are used for my application. Here in this case I specify 2. Important to know is that you need to prefix the keys with one.microstream so that we are sure that we do not clash with any other configuration keys that you might have. And the second part of the name are the standard supported configuration properties of Microstream itself, which you can find in the documentation manual. Under the storage configuration properties, you find here a list of all of them. They are all optional, but you can all specify them in the same way. If you want to store your data on a cloud storage, like on AWS S3 bucket, for example, then you can add a Microstream dependency that supports that data storage location, and you can configure it also here through these application properties as described in the standard documentation. Another functionality that the extension allows is that you can define your root object and define it as a CDI bean so that you can inject it later on in service classes, for example. So I have here a root object which Microstream will handle. In this case it is just a simple list of strings with to-do items. I have a method here for retrieving all my to-dos and update to a to-do, for example. There are better ways of restructuring your root object, but this is just an example how to use the extension. So the only thing that you need to do is annotate it here with storage. Storage is defined within the integration for Quarkus, and this serves two purposes. First of all, it indicates for Microstream that this is your root object, but it also signals to the extension that an instance of this class will be published as a CDI bean that you also can inject into other parts of your code, and thus make your data objects available wherever you need it. Now that we have configured the data storage and defined our root object, the only thing we need to do is make use of those objects that we have created. So no more configuration, we can start developing our functionality of our application. For example, you might have a to-do service where you want to retrieve all the to-dos or want to add one. Since they are defined as CDI beans, you can inject, for instance, our data root object with all the data into this class. We can also inject the storage manager. The storage manager from Microstream itself is also turned into a CDI bean. So that means that retrieving all the to-dos from your data root is returning that list with strings that we have defined earlier. Adding a to-do to the root is then get the entire list and add that no to-do which we received as parameter. We are changing something, so don't forget to store, and what we are going to store is here the entire list because we have added an item. So by using the store method, it can store that newly added to-do into our data storage. So as simple as that is how you can use the objects that are defined in Microstream through that extension. Well, There is maybe one additional thing that I can tell in this short video is how you can initialize data, because we have some kind of additional support for that integrated within the extension, which is not available by default in the core functionality of Microstream, because you can do it there in a programmatic way. So first time, if you start up your application, your database, your data storage will be empty. There will be no to-dos. So how can you initialize that data for the first time? That can be as easy as creating a class which you define as a CDI beam, and you say that that class implements the StorageManager initializer interface, which is defined in that integration code. That interface defines a initialize method, which receives a StorageManager. So from that StorageManager you can get the root, which is known, which is empty at that case. So you can check to see if it's empty, and if it is empty, you can initialize data here by adding that I should not forget to create a blog for this video. Don't forget to store the data. I'm using here the store root method because then I'm 100% sure that everything is stored, because it's an empty database and it only stores this new entry then, of course, in this case. So by just having a CDI bean that implements this interface, I can initialize my data when my application starts up for the very first time and my data storage is empty. So that was all for this integration video. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed. Bye.